Hello, everyone. Welcome to Part Nirvana's AI and Automation podcast, where we bring you practical insights from global leaders at the forefront of AI and innovation. On the show today, we have two of our AAB members, Doug, Shannon, and Alex. Hello, both of you.
Hey, good to be here.
Let's get started with some introductions. So, over to you, Doug, for your introduction.
Sure. Yeah, I like to describe myself as an enterprise practitioner in the intelligent automation and Gen AI space. I also have like 22 years in enterprise understanding from IT level, from help desk to all the way to design level of operating systems. Happy to be here and drive the conversation and really, give back.
Great. Alex?
Yep. Spent the past decade predominantly in go-to-market and engagement lead type of roles, specifically in the automation, intelligent automation, hyper automation, APA, whatever we're calling it now, space. I like to think I'm more of like a techno-functional type of character. Have a couple different certifications that are industry specific as well, but this is what my kids think I'm the biggest nerd about. They think I like to play with robots and have a little fun with it too. So happy to bring that type of perspective from a sales and go-to-market perspective.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, if your kids can understand it, nothing like it, right? So I guess you're going to explain it like it's five today.
Hopefully, yeah. We'll see if I can. I think that's the biggest. That's one of the biggest challenges we have as the space continues to grow.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to discuss today in our podcast. We want to dive into a lot of these acronyms and hype that's floating around there, right? We have many of these terms. We have this whole AI agents, then we have agentic automation, we have agentic process automation, and then we always had this evolution now with LLMs. We've been talking of large action models. There is still RPA, BPM. So what are all these things? So, we just wrote a 80-page report on agentic process automation, and I'll leave a link to that if you guys want to grab it. But, we've looked at this in depth in terms of what AI agents are, what agentic process automation is, and each of those terms. So that's what we'll dive into today. So let's start with, I think, one of the key terms going on in the automation space there, agentic process automation, because that's the term that's going around right now within the automation space, and seems to be the evolution. We've been going from RPA to intelligent automation with AI, ML, with some Gen AI, and now with LLMs, AI agents, we seem to be moving to agentic process automation. We're seeing all the RPA vendors moving there. We're seeing all the BPM vendors moving there. We're also seeing iPaaS vendors moving there. We are seeing cloud vendors move there. We're seeing IDP players move there. It's a complete convergence. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about agentic process automation, how it compares to other things. So I'll open it up to you guys. What do you guys think is agentic process automation?
Sure. I mean, agentic process automation is interesting. It's interesting also to see a couple of named vendors in the space, tailoring this into their message and like their how-to, right? The agentic is interesting because that came out of LLMs not being as successful as people thought they were going to be, because LLMs come out and say, hey, it becomes search, right? So the first year of LLMs was like, now it's taking over Google search. You can search it for information, yet the information was very much like Wikipedia, like 100x. And then it becomes, now it's more like the blank page approach, where you can actually go, oh man, how do I start this thing? I have a good idea, or I have an idea how to understand this as a human. And now it's answering that blank page approach. But then now it goes to more the agentic, because all those things I just said don't always help business out. It does, but it's very circumspect, right? Like you didn't measure how many people search in your business. You didn't measure how long it took people to start a blank page and stare at it and go, well, how do I do that? Right? So since you didn't measure it, it's perceived value. So there really is no value at the end of the day because you didn't know. So now they're like, well, we need use cases. So let's get to use cases. How do you get use cases from an LLM? You don't, but you may, even some people say, oh, RAG model's a use case. It's, to me, just my honest opinion is it's not. It's a function. It's a function that we use to handle the hallucination side of it. It's a function how we ground it and do some fine tuning. So agency, right, which is agentic. How do we build agency into our processes? Well, isn't that kind of agentic process automation then? And it is very much what you said, Nandan, is it's the next step. It's like going that right way. And even with anything agentic, I say it's a step in the right direction. It's not the end all be all. So that's my kind of stance. But yeah, Alex, what do you got?
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd agree with that. I think I like to think about it through a linear process lens, like through sequential steps like A, B, C, D, E. So this is how I'm going to try and explain it to my 6.5-year-old. We'll see if it
Very
flies.
good.
Um, but if you think about what a lot of enterprises, a lot of consulting firms, SIs have been working on, as well as addressing step A, step B, step C, step D, oftentimes step D has some type of complex human intervention. You've seen human in the loop come into play. You've seen more low-code app development to help facilitate some of that. So there's a whole element around like the user experience layer, right? But then the ability to ingest the knowledge and context, right, has historically been sitting in a light type of ML type of story, as well as a more like decision engine, rules engine, that type of story, right? So we've been automating steps A, B, C, getting to step D, maybe putting the human in the loop, maybe adding a decision engine, maybe adding some type of series of if-then statements, and then go to steps E, F, G, H, right? And so when I think about this larger APA story, right, there's an argument for, well, how do I put a large language model inside of step D that incorporates some of the context and the RAG structure that Doug, you're referring to, which is important. And you start to drive a higher straight through processing story from A to G or H or whatever, right? But I think that's a very crude and simple way to think about it, because there's a whole story around, using large language models inside of these associated tools to then accelerate the development of associated scripts, whether it's through the user interface, whether it's through a backend API, right? We're seeing the convergence of RP and iPaaS, like your Salesforce example, Nandan. And there's also a story around using these LMs as augmentation to different technologies as well. So I kind of think about it in three ways. So one is incorporating LMs into the automated workflows, in example one. Two, incorporating LLMs or those agentic capabilities into the associated platforms that folks are developing on, whether it's using Cursor or whether it's using, agent builders, like you're seeing a lot of these different vendors come out with, or using LLMs to then augment the associated technologies. I think one of the biggest ones we would all agree with is the IDP story, right? So how do you help train different IDP engines with LLMs? How do you help use the extracted metadata, make sure that that phone number or that tax ID number or whatever it is after the IDP engine picks it up, how do we make sure that it's massaged and in the right type of data format to go into that target system? So I like to think about it in like three different ways, if that makes sense. Do y'all agree, disagree?
Yes, absolutely.
I see it as
So
like the commoditization, right? Like
Right.
as things innovate, it gets commoditized. And the same thing with like the agent side and the agency side, where you have the LLMs coming in, and then what you're saying is like, well, you're having them come in, yes, but then you're also segmenting it and then still involving LLMs at the smaller stages, because it still answers questions, still helps out and makes that more commoditized, because then each section is more decentralized and is able to drive.
I
yes,
agree with that.
and
Yeah.
I think also it's providing more cognitive abilities within our workflow, right? We've
Right.
always had this desire when we are doing the BPMs, RPS of the world. I wish there was something which could take on things that we had to bring in people to make some decisions, make some finer decisions, and so that was not available, which is kind of becoming available now. There is pros and cons to it, but the thing is that I try like to call the LLM as a big brain. So because it's really a brain, an artificial brain, which actually surpasses human intelligence in some benchmarks, right? I mean, it's a different kind of intelligence, but it has got cognitive abilities. So once that is there, how do you use it? And I think that's what you both were alluding to. So that, like Doug said, agency. So we now have this agency, this something which can bring in that intelligence. And so it's like the tools can now think. Now, what happens when the tools can think? So that's what this all the vendors are looking to incorporate within, and that's what is being called as agentic process automation. That's not completely an AI agent because we are still having this within workflows. So if you look at UiPath's workflow that they example that they've released, it's basically they still have the document understanding or IDP. They have the various libraries out there, and then wherever there was a cognitive ability needed, or a human in the loop, as they call it, they're bringing the agents. So the advantage, especially now working with customers, what I'm understanding is that within a business, it's very important to have that control. Because an AI agent, which a pure agent, like we saw Manus AI right now from China, if you saw it, it's operating many applications at the same time. It can operate 50 tasks at the same time, no human involvement. Those are great. Suppose you want to do multiple social media posts because that's not very critical. But if you are, looking to decide on a supplier, and which is very crucial for your business, you cannot do that. You need some guardrails with that. And so that's where I think agentic process automation comes in, where it's somewhere in between the earlier wave of automation, the traditional automation, the RPA, BPAs, IPASs of the world, and the AI agents, which has got a lot of autonomous things. I'm sure we are going to that thing. But right now, the AI agents, if you look at all these things, operator, deep research, all these things are focused on consumers, even like things like RabbitMQ. But these in enterprises, what we are seeing, every tool that come up from whomever I looked up, from Microsoft to Camunda to Workato to IBM, everyone who's done doing these things is bringing in some guardrails using workflows. And that's, in my mind, agentic process automation.
I would agree with the agentic side of that, right? So agentic is very much still very workflow, it's still based on history, still very task-based. And then you have where that conversation changes and you say, well, then there's AI agents that are more goal-based and kind of handle everything in between, but on a goal side, which we can talk about that a little bit later. But like that's where most people are getting mixed up is like you have like the workflow side and then you have like the actual monitor and tracking and actually, doing the work and then auditing that work. And that's kind of the other part, like the path forward side.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
are you saying AI agents has workflows? Is that what you said?
AI agents also have workflows, but it's like, so you have agentic, right? And you have agentic agents and or agentic workflows or agentic process automation. And the agency side of that is able to take workflows on and do more of that human in the loop, just like what Alex was talking about and how to leverage those different activities and those different systems. However, AI agents have an ability to kind of orchestrate. So we get into that next level of orchestration,
Yes.
but also high level thought processes of like goals and say, as a human, I'm going to write to an AI agent. I want to do a thing. This is my goal, my outcome goal that I'm trying to reach for.
Yes.
This is what I'm looking for. And then they could actually use chain of thought and chain of custody and some of these other things that are coming out to say, oh, really what Doug's asking for is to do these things in this steps. We should probably go look at these steps and do these out. Oh, the AI agent doesn't always have to do all that. It can actually kick off to a agentic agent or a chatbot or a co-pilot and actually do more of that and then come back to the user again and actually handle that goal.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think the difference in agentic process automation is that we are explicitly still defining the workflow. So we are
Yes.
constraining it within our
Yes.
workflow, whereas an agent kind of constructs its workflow like what you're saying, and it orchestrates. It, like you said, and it's very interesting to see their thought patterns. I don't know if you've seen the new reasoning models now after DeepSeek released its thought, how it is thinking.
Yeah.
And you can actually read through how it is thinking. It's very, very interesting. And even if you look at now, if people hearing this, if you want to look at that, go to Grok 3. It's free. Actually, Grok 3 is one of the models I use a lot now because it's free, and they're trying to get into this space. They show the reasoning. And it's awesome to see how it's reasoning through those things. And one of the things that happened with DeepSeek, and one of the biggest movements for DeepSeek was this metacognition movement, or AI having this aha moment. So it was reasoning through these things, and then it said that, oh, ho, the user wants that, so let me try that. So that metacognition is a new ability that's coming up with reasoning. So, but yeah, that's very interesting. But to what Doug said, in an agentic model, you're going beyond that thought of reasoning. You're basically able to call different tools and orchestrate that and carry out action. So yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that was agentic process automation, and I think we did some comparison with what RPA and AI agents are. One more thing being thrown about in this space is large action models. So we're talking of large language models. There's this big talk about large action models, especially in the automation space. So, what are your thoughts on large action models?
I'll go first. They're interesting, right? Because but I'm trying to think of how to explain it to everyone that may not get it. And so we could talk about like how to do like travel, right? Because that's like some of the most common use cases you see. But I almost want people to look at it in a different way, thinking this through. It's imagine robots that aren't physical robots and imagine robots that are actually inside the computer and you say, I want to go to these websites and do these things. And it's like going through and understanding what the site looks like, going down each layer of every click and every option to know and start mapping it out. So then it knows what to do. So when you ask it a question, it automatically knows where to go, knows where to find, knows how to search, and those just get better and better over time. So it's like web crawling, automated, very robotic, but still like gets the job done. Even if the site changes, this is where we get better from like RPA and automation days and even intelligent automation where, oh, the site changed. Well, we can go crawl it fairly quickly, go index it, pull it in, and then drive that. And so these large action models are taking action on different things, especially websites and stuff like that. So as it gets more, it's going to get very interesting. We can talk about some of the security stuff later, but I mean, Alex, do you want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, from my perspective, I think if you look at the history of our space, and I think it's highlighted by some of the acquisitions you've seen of UiPath and Process Gold, you've seen Celonis move into the automation space as well. You've seen several players add process mining, process intelligence, whatever you call it. A lot of the legacy automation world has been less process engineering and more just draping automation on top of the, as is applications, as is processes, like that type of thing. And a lot of that's coming out of the legacy BPO back office type of story that we've started. This whole space started in the early 2000s, right? When I look at this LAM story, I think, and especially coming out of the LLM burst that we've had since November 22, I think it really starts to change the way that we look at application development, application modernization, given that these new technologies now exist. Now, there's a lot to your point, Doug, on security and how they work, that type of thing, right? But you look at what Operator is doing, you look at some of these other different like LAM capabilities. I think it's going to start breaking down that historical wall between the automation capabilities that enterprises have and the legacy enterprise IT organizations that historically there's been a little bit of wall between the two because a lot of us in the legacy RPA world were working with the business. It was being sold as a alternative to app modernization. And now you've started to see those two pieces start to come more together, right? Regardless of that legacy firewall. Now, the LAM story, I think, is really interesting because there is a dependency and an increasing dependency on application structure and how applications are developed. I think you're going to start seeing that being pulled more into design as well. I think there's going to be a story around how those applications are designed and built for associated personas and associated workflows as well. And so imagine LAMs that are specifically designed for Concur and for Concur for a travel and expense manager or for an associated persona, right? So I think there's some interesting combinations where you're starting to see more application modernization plus automation, those start to mesh through that LAM story that we historically have not had. I don't know, Nandan and Doug, if you guys would agree with that opinion. I think it's still way early, but at least I think it's starting to shine a light on the need to bring these two together.
I see the SLM story like that, which is the small language models. So in LLM, there can be small lambs too, maybe. Uh, I think,
Pointed lambs, right? I think, yeah, that could be that. Yeah.
That'll
yeah,
confuse
yeah.
my kids, but keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Small, large action models. Yeah.
Small, large action models. Yeah. Actually, small action models, right?
I guess it'd be slams. Would they be slams then? Yeah, sorry.
No,
Yeah.
it is SAM, small action model. But anyway, but I think what is interesting to me in the LAM or large action model space is the merging of, I think Alex alluded to that, is the process mining story and the automation story. So process mining, especially task mining, which came after process mining. Process mining was looking at the logs. Task mining was looking at the screens, and then they were making what Scan calls as telemetry of work, and I like that term. So it's basically they were collecting the data of the work that people are doing, and so they've been collecting the data for some time, and they were using that to come up with the process diagram and then help you with the automation. But now it becomes even more exciting because now that's data. Now you can take the data, and that's the data for the LAM. The large action model, instead of the language, it has got actions. So now the actions is the data that you've been getting from task mining. So you take that and then you feed it. And so that basically all these things are auto generators, right? Like it's a prediction machine. So basically by learning what people are doing at the computers, and based on what they're seeing, and they're seeing this across multiple computers. So Sue from finance is doing better than from Albert from finance. So then they can learn from Sue and help them understand, help carry out tasks in a more efficient manner. So I think that bringing about of this task data and automation, and it can be that, and in fact that's what some of these companies in the space are doing. I know Orbi is working on that. Is basically take that process mining data, task mining data, and actually generate an automation, which was promised to us earlier, but this is now basically using LAMs to actually automate the stuff, which
Yeah.
is very interesting.
Well, there's a story there too with, all of us coming from the legacy automation space and the downside of traditional RPA being brittle, right? There's a story here around LAM functionality for more complex user interface automation, like as well as the additional context. And here's an example, right? So if you look at, this is a project that I've done in my prior life, but one of the things that we were targeting as part of a Salesforce Classic to Salesforce Lightning upgrade was providing a digital assistant to call center agents for voice channels. And what we found, we were doing some of the call driver assessment and the experience, the assessment for the agent experience, was a lot of the after call work, a lot of the post call notes, a lot of the billing order management work for sending out a new widget. I'm just going to leave it at that. That was very deterministic, right? We could have bots pick up those activities. We could end the call at a certain time. We could inject a form into the agent and then the call center agent, and then trigger it off to the bots and then take that on, right? And so a lot of the business case was strong for that. We're able to, create a 20% reduction in handle time, which was massive across several hundred agents. But if you tried to, go earlier into the process flow, aka the pre-call and during call activities, you ran into some pretty significant challenges in terms of one, the ability to handle multiple different call types, right? And at this point in time, there were 4 that were ranging for about 90% of the call volume. But if you looked at the entire call volume, there was about 20 or so, right? So how do you build deterministic automation handling for all those call types? And there may be some that get routed the wrong way or whatnot, right? So there's a story around how do you inject more intelligence into that type of functionality. But the second piece, and maybe Doug and Nana, you guys have experienced this too, but certain applications are less friendly as well to use our, UI-based automation techniques, Salesforce Lightning being one of the main ones, right? A great example. And so I think that there's this really interesting story from a LAM perspective that starts to more parallel what a digital worker is that we've been talking about, have been selling, have been deploying since 2015, 2016 because of the BPO heritage. But now you have more flexible UI-based automation techniques and more non-deterministic capabilities that allow us to move more end to end, right? And so I think the LAM function plus the LLM story is a really interesting story that actually allows us to restructure how work happens versus some of the legacy RPA, DPA story that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
That has probably been more restrictive than what we would hope or imagine for. I
I
don't know,
think
Doug,
I,
if you
I
would
think
agree. Oh,
Alex, you summarized it very well. I think the first part you mentioned about LLMs is what
yeah,
is APA, the more cognitive aspect. And then the LAM, the bot function, which we always wanted. But I think at the end of the day, it's basically the addition of more cognitive functions, with which again I was calling as the big brain, which is making
yeah,
this big difference. And then this big brain with some tools, with some memory is what is becoming agentic. So it's an awesome story. There's a lot of potential. We're still yet to see all the potential, but we
yeah.
have a lot of challenges out there. So which I think we should dive into in one of our future episodes, because we are running out of time here. But this
Hmm.
was a great discussion, and I think Alex, your summary is a great place to end it on. But before we
I
go,
did-
guys, where can people find you guys? Starting with you, Alex. Sorry, yeah, Alex. Where can people find you?
LinkedIn's great. So Alex Dixon, you'll find Alexander R. Dixon is my part of the URL on LinkedIn.
Oh, wow. Okay, Alexander. Okay, and Doug.
Yeah, same thing with me. Like, best ways to find me is LinkedIn. I post Monday through Friday, put a lot of information out there. People can learn from that and then connect with me on there. It's probably faster than anything. Don't email me because half the time I don't read them because there's too many. But I'll check my LinkedIn here and there, like on lunch breaks and stuff. So
You should use AI a lot. You should make some AI
I
agent
probably need to
to.
use more AI. But yeah, I need to hire people. Some of these people hire people, and I'm just like, okay, maybe I just do it all me.
I,
If you follow me, then you'll end up following Doug because my algorithm is completely refined for Doug. So you'll see my likes and comments and interactions with Doug's posts.
that's the community, right?
Yep.
And so I'll leave links to everyone's profile so that people can connect. So this was a great discussion, a great chat, guys. Thank you so much, and looking forward to more of this. Thank you.